Hi friends, so wishing all of you a very happy Diwali. Though on the sports field it has not been a great Diwali so far for Indian sports. It started with a heartbreaking loss in the final of the Sultan of Johor Junior Hockey Cup, where India lost the final to Australia after losing 1-2 to a very late goal from Australia in the final, and they lost a chance to win the gold. Then it followed up with a heartbreaking loss for Tanvi Sharma, world's number one junior girls singles player, who had a great chance to win a gold medal for India after 17 long years, but she lost the final to the second seed from the juniors rank, that is Phichit Prichasak, Anyapat Phichit Prichasak from Thailand, in straight games. Though Tanvi is the number one junior player, she has a world ranking in badminton of 47, whereas Anyapat has a ranking of 248 and she is the number 2 in junior ranks. And she was playing against Tanvi in Guwahati in front of Tanvi's home crowd, that is our own home crowd, which was passionately rooting for her. But Anyapat showed a great performance yesterday, an inspired performance to outplay Tanvi to win it in straight games and win the gold medal. And Tanvi lost a golden chance to win herself and India a rare gold in Junior World Championship after 17 long years. The last time it was Saina Nehwal who had won it in 2007, and since then nobody had won a single medal in the singles event. So that way it was a great achievement by Tanvi, but she would be disappointed, and so are all Indian fans who would be a little greedy and were expecting she should have won it on merit because her ranking showed that she was a favorite. If that was not enough, after those two reversals, the Diwali became much worse for Indian sports when India lost two crucial matches in the cricket field. First, the Indian men's team had their first defeat of 2025 after a streak of 8 unbeaten wins or games in a ODI match when they lost to Australia convincingly with nearly 5 overs to spare yesterday. So Australia smartly, as you expect from any host country, had kept their first ODI match against India in the Optus Stadium in Perth, which has the maximum help for the bowlers, it has the maximum bounce, and the fact that Australia won the toss on a rainy day with frequent rain interruptions made it almost impossible for India to have a fair fight against Australia. So the world champions had a massive advantage after winning the toss and putting India into bat because the conditions were helping the bowlers, and on the top of that, every 2-3 overs there were interruptions and the total number of overs were getting recalibrated and readjusted, and it was not helping India, which was trying to adjust to the bounce and the moving balls, and also against the two great bowlers like Starch and Hazelwood. And on top of that, they had to also make a recalibration as to whether they should go with a little more attacking style or they would conserve wickets, because they were not knowing at any particular time what was the final number of overs they were expected to play. So ultimately the match from 50 overs got reduced to 49, from 49 to 36 to 32, and finally it became a 26 overs match. And unfortunately for India, all the interruptions happened during India's batting, didn't allow Indian batters to adjust themselves to get used to the condition or to make any form strategy. Whereas when Australia came into bat, there was no more interruptions. They knew they had 26 overs to score those 131 runs or 132 runs, and they knew it was a below par total, and they had all the time to plan and strategize, and that's how they managed to plan and win it very comfortably. So that was a crushing defeat for India, though it depends on how we look at this match, as whether we should be very critical because of the kind of ultimate margin or the comfort with which Australia won, or whether we should be a little fair and rational to put the ground conditions and also the nature and weather condition into perspective and try to see that India were absolutely in an unfair situation. So maybe it was not proper to judge, or it's not proper to judge or evaluate India's performance on the light of the conditions in which they were made to play. So there would be two views on it, one trying to be a little generous towards India and one to a little critical. We'll try to put it both in front of you. The first one is, yes, The conditions were very tough in the beginning. Australia won the toss and they put India into bat. And while India was trying to set themselves in, there were frequent weather interruptions and the overs were getting adjusted. So India never got a chance to make any proper planning as to what could be a decent total to defend and whether they should go all out with their attack or they try to conserve wickets, because the number of overs were a variable factor throughout India's batting. So that way it is very unfair, or it is not proper to right now be very critical of India's performance based on just one rare loss in a first match with so many other factors influencing the outcome. But if we look in a more fairer or objective or a very in a very clinical manner, there are also a lot of reasons to feel critical about India's performance and try to see some worrying signs there. First of all, when India came into bat, before the rain interruptions had a massive impact in terms of readjusting the number of overs, India had lost almost 3 crucial wickets, all top order, the best of their batters. And those batters were not some rookie players or some young players who were inexperienced or who had no understanding of how to calibrate their innings or how to strategize their innings. They got out genuinely to the bowlers without trying to change their strategy or method or trying to play in an abnormal way or in a very forced manner. They tried to play their natural cricket and they perished. So whether it is Rohit Sharma with 8 or Virat Kohli with 0 or even Shubman Gill for just 10 or something, and they were followed by Shreyas Iyer, who also didn't last. And once again Shreyas Iyer fell to a slightly awkward delivery from Hazelwood. He has become almost like a bunny to Hazelwood, who has consumed him almost 5 to 6 times this year. So yes, there was a lot of problems with the Indian top order batting, and let's not forget these are all established veteran players. They are not players whom India is trying out to give chances to the youngsters for the 2027 World Cup. These are players whom India hope would be the match winners because they have been proven match winners. And that included the two of the biggest names that is under discussion and under the scanner, that is Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. There have been a school of thought which thinks that they should have been treated better, they should have not been there should not have been a sword hanging on their head, and captainship should have been with Rohit Sharma, and their position for the 2027 ODI World Cup should be almost an obvious one, should be a given one, there should be no discussion on that. Whereas there is another section which believes that maybe the team management led by Gautam Gambhir and the selectors led by Ajit Agarkar are right. They don't want to give a blanket signal to them that they would be playing the 2027 World Cup. So without putting a sword on their head, they are actually trying to tell them that you have to at least show your intent, your form and your fitness. So the jury is still out on which side of the thing is correct or not, but the fact remains is that they need to have enough of exposure, practice and experience just before big matches in ODI if they are supposed to either get acclimatized to the ODI format before the World Cup, or they want to prove themselves to the management and the selectors that they can perform. Otherwise it would be very unfair if they would be just coming into play and then they would be stacking up a few failures, and then the question would come whether they deserve to be in that ODI team. Because today they have already retired from all other formats. They are hardly playing any domestic cricket. They are not playing in any A series games. So expecting them to come over to a team, have 2 to 3 days of net practice and then play in the Optus Stadium in Perth, which is the bounciest stadium in Australia, against bowlers like Hazelwood and Stark, and then start scoring runs under conditions which were so bowler friendly, would be very unfair and which would not be doing any justice to either their form or their talent or even to the purpose for which Indian team is to be given those exposure. So either you have to keep them out of the team, or if you are trying to include them or give them a fair chance to prove themselves, then force them or at least organize matches where they would be having exposure and experience and practice. So it would be fair to say that Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli should have played the India A versus Australia series, which concluded just a few weeks before. That could have given them a lot of exposure against some quality Australian bowlers, and it would have given them the much enough practice, as well as also kept them match fit and kept them ready for the bigger test ahead in the ODI format. But that didn't happen. Shubman Gill, Shreyas Iyer didn't look comfortable, and once again on a bouncy pitch, India perished against the quality Australian bowlers. But let's not forget that India had a 8-match winning streak coming into yesterday's match. India was unbeaten in 2025 in ODI format, and India also was chasing a record from 1980 when they had their first defeat in ODI in the entire year in December. So if they could have stretched their unbeaten record till a little couple over 2 more months, they could have broken that record. But then ultimately they had to taste defeat yesterday, and it was a convincing win for Australia. Now, also there are factors like very genuine cricketing factors which you have to consider. First thing, let us look at this Australian team. Yes, they are the world champions, but so are India. India is also the ICC Champions Trophy winners. Australia doesn't have now Smith, Maxwell or Stoinis, who have all retired. Cummins, Carey, Jampa, English, Cameron Green are all out with injury, and they were either completely out of the series or they are out for 1 or 2 games because of other factors. So it's because of injury or because of this. One of them, like Alex Carey, is playing domestic cricket for the preparation for Ashes. So their priority is Ashes. So it was almost a rookie team. It was a team which was more inexperienced than even their A team. Look at their batting. Their only 2 opening batters have some experience. That is Mitchell Marsh, their captain, and Travis Head, their number 1 batter. But after that, just note down the names. That is players like Mitchell Owen, Matthew Short, Matt Renshaw, Josh Philippe. Those names even an ordinary cricket fan in India would not be even aware of unless you are following Australian first class cricket or their Big Bash League. So those are the players who were there to take them to win after 1 or 2 wickets fell. And already they lost Travis Head cheaply yesterday. So if Mitchell Marsh has not shown the kind of responsibility he showed yesterday, which unfortunately the Indian top order, the veterans didn't show, but that's where Mitchell Marsh showed the importance of experience, and he knew that even though 131 was a below par total in 26 overs by India, but he knew that all the batters who were to follow after him were actually inexperienced batters, though they were prone to getting pressurized and to crack against a quality Indian bowling. So he didn't want to land up in a situation where he would also join Travis Head in the pavilion and Australia would be, say, 20 for 3. That could have really created panic in the Australian batting lineup with that kind of inexperienced batters in the lineup. So he ensured he was there right till the end, and he would allow whoever inexperienced batters to come in the luxury of playing the natural cricket without being too scared or too panicky, and that's what he did. So yes, if you see the kind of Australian team against whom India was playing, it was almost like a Australian A team. So that kind of loss against an Australian A team is not acceptable because it is not a full strength team. So that way there are more signs for worry for India. And also the fact remains is that the Optus Stadium in Perth has a little bit of spice, a little bit of bounce, and this is closest to the kind of pitches which you would see in South Africa if India goes on to play in that World Cup in 2027. Now that would not be a condition, or that World Cup would not be played on pitches which are like the Dubai or Sharjah or Abu Dhabi or Ahmedabad kind of pitches. So if you see India's 8-match winning streak have been in India or in UAE, typical kind of subcontinent pitches where the ball is turning, where you can play even 3 to 4 spinners and you score runs, the pitch would be getting slower and turning, and then you have those mystery spinners, and then the opponents would be struggling to even reach near to your total. So even though India had a 8-match winning streak, it was in particular conditions, and there was always a question mark hanging over India's ability to win consistently, like Australia team of the 2000s or the West Indies team of the 80s, on every condition. And that's where India was vulnerable, and once again by losing that match yesterday at Perth, India showed that India is right now not a clear-cut favorite on say Australian kind of pitches or New Zealand, English or South African pitches. So basically for Sena conditions, India has to work on its team, work on its strategy, work on its team composition, and play a kind of team which is more adaptable. So that's why also another factor why India has reason to worry. But fortunately, it is just the starting of the rehearsal or starting of the preparation for the 2027 World Cup, which is still 2 years away, and India should be better prepared. And India has to also look at their team composition. It was again a bizarre team composition when India manages to win because of the kind of talent India has. That kind of team selection gets buried under the carpet. But the fact remains is that most of these team selections under Gautam Gambhir regime has been little bizarre. For example, you didn't send Nitish Kumar Reddy before Washington Sundar. You are playing Washington Sundar, Nitish Kumar Reddy, and so many all-rounders, but you still have no chance or no room for Kuldeep Yadav, who had just recently been man of the series. Yes, it was on the subcontinent or Dubai kind of pitches where the ball was a little helpful, but then he's still your number one spinner and you didn't play him. So that raises question about whether you are going for to the any kind of match with your ability to win the matches with their bowling, or you just want to have batters who can give you that buffer because of the failure or likely failure of your creamy layer of batting. That cannot be a strategy that your top order, which is so famous in the world for their batting, would continue to fail, and for even 50 or 20 overs you need 8 to 9 kind of all-rounders, where even Harshit Rana you are playing mainly because he may be able to contribute a little more than Prasidh Krishna or whoever the other bowler is. So you can't go on stacking your team with all-rounders who are actually little below par with their bowling incisiveness or the potency, and then you keep somebody like Kuldeep Yadav or Arshdeep Singh, depending on whichever conditions you are playing in the pavilion or in the dressing room. So India has reasons to worry. India has reasons to be feeling little, have to give a little bit of thought on that, and their team selection, their management decisions have to also improve, and so also their preparation and their focus on the kind of conditions they would be expecting in South Africa. Now let's come to the last of the reversal that India had, which is the most heartbreaking. Indian women's cricket team lost a match which they should have won against the English women team in the ODI World Cup yesterday at Indore. It was an inexplicable kind of choking India had, and unfortunately this is not the first time. There is a pattern to it. Indian women team have been choking in big matches in the ICC tournaments against the Sena countries mostly. Since 2020, India has failed to win a single World Cup match against a Sena country. So last time they had won a match was in 2020. For last 5 years they have not won. And then how can we forget the infamous chokes that India have been having? India has been choking big time. It started in 2017 World Cup final, and that is unfortunately the closest India has ever come to lift a World Cup, and they should have lifted that World Cup on that evening in England. They were chasing just 38 runs of last 45 balls with 7 wickets in hand. The match was in their hand, the cup was already in their one pocket, and yet somehow they managed to panic, somehow they managed to choke, somehow they managed to collapse. And then everybody from Poonam Raut, who was playing such a fabulous knock of 86, Harmanpreet, who had scored a brilliant 50, they perished, and after that everyone perished, right from Sushma Verma to Deepti Sharma to somebody like Jhulan Goswami, Sikha Pandey, Rajeshwari Gaikwad, Poonam Yadav. Everybody failed, and India lost 7 wickets for just 28 runs, and they fell short by 9 runs to lose that final and lose their golden opportunity to win their maiden World Cup. Just imagine if India had won that World Cup, they would not have that mental scar, that choking tag would not have come to them. The mental agony and the kind of blockage that has now engulfed them for the last 8 years would not have been there. They might have already reached for more glory, they could have achieved much more, and now today they could have reached the stature of Australia in terms of global dominance perhaps. But everything changed with that mega choke in that fateful night in England, and after that there has been one after the other some instances of incomprehensible choking shown by Indian women's team. Mostly it has happened against Australia in the big ICC events. In 2022 World Cup, India scored 277 on a slightly challenging pitch, and they looked really set to win that match against Australia, but Australia somehow managed to reach the total target by the 50th over and had a narrow escape. Then in 2023 T20 World Cup, India was on the verge of beating Australia. Harmanpreet was playing a brilliant captain's knock that time, and India just needed 35 of last 33 balls in a T20 match. That means just run a ball with 6 wickets in hand, and somehow they lost all the 6 wickets to fall short of the winning target. And once again, a golden chance to beat Australia and reach the final, and perhaps that could have given them a T20 World Cup also, was given away from India's hand. And then the 2023 Commonwealth Games, it is again a heartbreaking loss and heartbreaking choke, because that was the match where India was in a position to win it even if they allowed themselves to choke, and yet they managed to choke beyond a certain point where they had to lose it and give away a match against Australia in the final and lose the gold medal, which was already in their hand. It was an inexplicable kind of choking shown by Indian women. So Indian women have been showing choking in big matches in every ICC tournament, especially against Sena country. And yesterday it was one more instance. Unfortunately, it was 2017 World Cup final which was replayed. This time in the round robin stage, it was again Indian women against Australian women, and Indian women showed the same kind of collapse, same kind of choking to give away a match which they should have won, and that should have made their task of qualifying for the semi-final almost so much easier. Unfortunately, they failed and they lost by just 4 runs, and that allowed England to grab the third semi-final berth. Now there is only one berth left, and it looks it will be a shootout between India and New Zealand. Yes, if India loses to New Zealand, because India is going to play against Bangladesh, which is relatively a weaker side, whereas New Zealand is going to play against England, which is a much stronger outfit, India can still go through because India has a healthier run rate. So if India manages to win, even after they lose to New Zealand, they can still win against Bangladesh and go through on run rate. But the fact remains is that if New Zealand wins against India and they manage to win against England, then India would not have their destiny in their own hand. They would have to depend on England beating New Zealand, and that predicament has come, that precarious situation has come because of the kind of choking that India exhibited in losing a match which they should have won. They grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory yesterday. At one point they were needing 55 runs of 53 balls. That means just run a ball for last 53 balls to win it with 7 wickets in their hand, and yet they managed to surrender those wickets and lose by just 4 runs. England would never have expected to win yesterday's match and escape so easily, and they would be really thanking their stars that India has some mental block against them or against the Sena countries in the big ICC tournaments that allowed them. Because let's not forget, barely months back India had gone to England, had beaten them comprehensively in ODI and T20 series, and England was also looking a little below par with their batting, and even in this match on a flat indoor pitch with a lightning fast outfield, they were cruising at 249 for 4 in the 44th over, and they were looking set to reach 300 at the bare minimum, and yet they also showed some harakiri, they also had some panic, and they finally were dismissed for 288. They were restrained or restricted to 288, which was a fabulous achievement by Indian women's bowling team, because England managed to score around 40 to 45 runs only in the last 5 overs, which was actually below par effort. And that meant on a flat pitch with such a lightning fast outfield, India was clear favourites to win. And when Harmanpreet and Smriti, who were both looking in supreme form, had added 125 runs at almost like a run a ball, the match seemed completely out of England's grasp, and it was seemed to be destined to be an Indian victory. But then first Harmanpreet got out to a very innocuous delivery, but at least that shot was giving her runs, so you can't blame her. She had already scored 70. But then when Smriti got out so close to the 100 and when she was so much in control, then the downfall started. Of course, you can give a little credit to her or give a little benefit of doubt because she was suffering from cramps, so maybe there was a little lapse of concentration. But after that, the way Dipti got out, when she was looking so fabulously in command with 50 runs, almost a run a ball, and she was not toiling hard or she was not looking in any pressure or any trouble against the English bowlers, and she was scoring at such a free will, She lost her mental balance. She got out. Then Richa Ghosh had an off day, and then Sneha Rana also had an off day, and then wickets fell one after the other. And before India could realize, 14 runs were required in the last over with hardly any firepower left, and India lost by 4 runs. So that defeat has come as their third consecutive loss against a Sena country in this World Cup after winning 2 easier games against Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So it doesn't show much about their performance or their form and their ability, and many people are critical that even if they manage to somehow reach the semi-final, they don't deserve to be in the semi-final on merit, because New Zealand has been unfairly deducted points because of the 2 matches against the weaker teams which were washed out because of the rain in Colombo. So that way New Zealand would be feeling a little hard done by the nature or by the weather factors. They should not have dropped points because of the washout. They should have won those matches, and if they would have done that, then India would have been under real pressure of getting knocked out of this World Cup. So it has been little unfair to New Zealand. So many people are saying, at least based on form and based on performance, this team doesn't deserve to be, and even if they qualify, they will qualify as a number 4 team, and that would mean they have to play Australia in the semi-final, and knowing Australia is an invincible kind of a team, they anyway would not have much hope against Australia in the semi-final. So it doesn't matter. They have already harmed their scope for winning their first ICC trophy enough by their performance so far. But then let's be also clear about these knockout matches or knockout matches in the big tournaments, because it doesn't matter how you have qualified for a knockout. Once you qualify, it's a matter of 2 good days. If you have 2 good days, you can beat 2 teams and then you can be a world champion. So while we can be really agreeing to the fact that India has not played the kind of cricket which deserves them to be in the semi-final, but let's not also be feeling that even if there is semi-final, they're not going to achieve anything, because then it would be a matter of 2 good days. Something can happen, a good toss to win, a dewy pitch or pitch where they would be batting second, there would be dew, then you never know, Australia may panic or whatever. So there's no guarantee about that just because today Australia is looking like the invincible side and you are looking like an ordinary side, you can't beat them or you can't win a World Cup once you reach the semi-final, because that would be a different kettle of fish once you reach the semi-final. But we have to wait for that time thing to happen. First, India has to ensure they qualify for the semi-final. For that, they would ideally like to beat New Zealand so that it will be much easier for them. But if they lose, that means that would be their 4th consecutive loss to a Sena country. That means their precarious record against Sena country would continue for the last 5 years, and that would further dampen their spirit, their confidence in the semi-final, irrespective of whoever they play, and even if they qualify for the semi-final. But we can wait and watch for that, and we can always wish and pray for a better performance from Indian team. Hopefully, the days and the weeks after Diwali would be better for Indian sport than the Diwali day itself. Let's hope and pray for the best. Thank you.